Yeah, I think there are people that want to copy Berkshire's model, but usually they don't want to copy it by also copying the model of the CEO having all of his money in the company forever. And I mean, they've got a different equation. They're interested in, and that's capitalism, but they have a whole different situation, and they probably have a somewhat different fiduciary feeling about what they're doing, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, and if it doesn't work, they go on to other things. And if what we do here at Berkshire doesn't work, I spend the end of my life regretting what I've created. So it's just a whole different personal equation, and there is no property casualty company that can basically replicate Berkshire. That wasn't the case at the start. I mean, at the start, we just had National Indemnity a few miles from here, and anybody could have duplicated what we had. But that was before a G. and the G came with us in 1986, and at that point, the other fellows should have given up.
Yeah.
Station 7, please.
Hi, my name is Marie. I'm from Melrose, Massachusetts. Thank you for the time today. As a young person interested in investing like myself, I would love to hear your insights, Mr. Buffett. What were some pivotal lessons you learned early in your career, and what advice do you have for young investors who are looking to develop their investment philosophy? Thank you.
Well, those are good questions. I wish I thought of them myself earlier in my life. Who you associate with is just enormously important, and don't expect that you'll make every decision right on that. I mean, but you are going to you're going to have your life progress in the general direction of the people that you work with, that you admire, that become your friends. I mentioned a few fellows that have died in the last couple of years. Well, all of those people were people that if we were working together on something 1/10,000th the size of Berkshire, I mean, they'd be the kind of people you choose. They're people that make you want to be better than you are, and you want to hang out with people that are better than you are and that you feel are better than you are, because you're going to go in the direction of the people that you associate with, and that's something you learn, and of course you learn it late in life. It's hard to really appreciate how important some of those factors are until you get much older. But when you've got people around you like Tom Murphy and just name him, Sandy Gottesman, Walter Scott, you're just going to live a better life than you do if you just go out and look at somebody that's making a lot of money and decide you're going to try and copy him or something of the sort. So I'd try to be associated with smart people too, where I could learn a lot from them, and I would try to look for something that I would do if I didn't need the money. I mean, what you're really looking for in life is something where you've got a job that you'd hold if you didn't need the money, and I've had that. And Charlie had it for a very, very long time. In fact, all the fellows I named had it, and they also, every one of those ones I named, they always did more than their share, and they never sought more than their share of the credit. They just behaved as the way you'd like anybody you work with, and when you find them, you treasure them, And when you don't find them, you still keep doing whatever causes you to eat or enables you to eat. But you don't give up on looking around, and you'll find people do wonderful things for you. I mentioned earlier going down to Geico and knocking on the door when the door was locked. I mean, who knows what was behind that door? Like went in, but in 10 minutes I found that I had a man that was going to be just wonderfully helpful to me. And of course, if somebody's going to be helpful to you, you want to try to figure out ways to be helpful to them. So you get a compounding of good intentions and good behavior. And unfortunately, you can get the reverse of that in life too. And with a lot of, I was lucky in having a good environment for living that kind of a life, and other people, have a whole different environmental situation. They have to overcome it. But don't feel guilty about your good luck if you live in the United States, there are 8 billion people in the world, and there's 330 million in the United States. You've already won the game to a great degree, and then just keep making the most of it. But you don't want to associate with people or enterprises that ask you to do something or tell you to do something that you shouldn't be doing. And that's one of the problems. I mean, different professions select for different types of people. And it's interesting to me that in the investment business, so many people get out of it after they've made a pile of money. You really want something that you'll stick around for, whether you need the money. Greg doesn't need the money. Ajit doesn't need the money remotely, but they enjoy what they do, and they're so damn good at it. I've had the advantage of seeing how that works over time. The best manager I ever knew, and there's a lot of contention for who that would be, but actually was Tom Murphy Sr., who lived to be almost 98. And I've never seen anybody that could get the potential out of other people more than Murph could. I mean, if you wanted to become a better person, you went to work for Tom Murphy. And there are all kinds of successful people that really don't have that don't bring that to the party. And I'm not saying that's the only way to succeed, but I think it's the most pleasant way to succeed for sure. And I think that the Berkshire experience is pretty dramatic. I mean, to operate with Sandy Gottesman from 1963 until he died a couple of years ago, Walter Scott for 30 years, and Craig operated with him for 25 years or so.
Right.
It was.
Yeah, 30.
Yeah, you really can't miss it. You'll learn all the time, but you'll not only learn how to be successful at business, you'll learn how to be successful at life. And so that's my recommendation. And for some reason, apparently you live longer too, because it's pretty amazing. I mean, these people I'm talking about, including myself, I mean, I like to attribute it to this and a few other things, but I think a happy person lives longer than somebody that's doing some things that they don't really admire that much in life. Okay. Let's move on to, I guess it's Becky next.
The first quarter ended March 31st, and it did show that Berkshire's cash pile expanded from the end of the last year. But the greatest market turmoil came in April. Martin Devine, a shareholder from Scotland who is attending the meeting today, wants to know, has the recent market volatility presented Berkshire with opportunities? And Martin just wrote in an addendum in the last 40 minutes or so, pointing out that you mentioned Berkshire almost invested $10 billion recently, and wanting to know if you could talk more about that.
Well, I can give you a good answer to the second part, which is no. But 10 billion wouldn't have done that much, you know. That's the other side, another side of it. What has happened in the last 30, 45 days, 100 days, whatever you want to pick up, whatever this period has been, is really nothing. There's been 3 times since we acquired Berkshire that Berkshire has gone down 50% in a fairly short period of time, 3 different times. Nothing was fundamentally wrong with the company at any time, but this is not a huge move. The Dow Jones average hit 381 in September of 1929. It got down to 42. So that's like going from 100 to 11. This has not been a dramatic bear market or anything of the sort. I mean, it was, you know, like pointed out, if I've had 250 trading days a day, you know, for however many years I've been old enough to trade stocks, got 17 or 18,000 days. There's been plenty of periods that just are dramatically different than this. I mean, when the day I was born, the Dow Jones was at 240, and that was August 30th, 1930, and between that and the low, it went from 240 to 41. I mean, so if people think that it made a really major change, it didn't. If it had gone up 15% instead of down 15%, people think they take that with remarkable grace. but if it makes a difference to you whether your stocks are down 15% or not, you need to get a somewhat different investment philosophy, because the world is not going to adapt to you. You're going to have to adapt to the world, and you will see a period certainly in the next 20 years, you'll see a period that will be in what somebody in the market described one time as a hair curler compared to anything you've seen before. I mean, it just happens periodically. The world makes big mistakes, and surprises happen in dramatic ways, and the more sophisticated the system gets, the more the surprises can be out of right field. That's part of the stock market, and that's what makes it a good place to focus your efforts if you've got the proper temperament for it, and a terrible place to get involved if you get frightened by markets that decline and get excited when stock markets go up. I don't mean to sound particularly critical. I mean, I know people have emotions, but you got to check them at the door when you invest. Okay. Station 8, please.
Good morning, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Greg, and Mr. Ajit. My name is Peter Chen. I'm from Shanghai, China. This is my first time attending this shareholders meeting. I would like to ask a question about the wisdom of life. Have you ever encountered any major setbacks or low points in your life? And how did you get through and overcome them? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, everybody gets setbacks, and some people have particularly bad luck in that respect, and others get through with fairly minors. But Charlie, he had setbacks. I had setbacks. I mean, it's part of life, and they're not any fun. I don't have any great advice for you about having the time of your life while you're having some major setback. But it comes with lifetime. You certainly have a setback when you die. And so everybody's got that setback guaranteed to them. But some people get, and I mean, it isn't a laughing matter in a sense, because, I mean, people get extraordinary bad luck, and other people get extraordinary good luck. Usually the people who get good luck don't really think it was so much luck as themselves, but you're just going to have it. I think that you're less likely to have it in terms of medical problems, in terms of various things in life. I mean, you were born at a good time. I mean, if you look all the way through the history of China, when would you rather have been born? 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, or now? It's just hands down. You'd be lucky. I mean, if I came from 20 generations of shepherds, I think I get kind of tired of my life just looking at these sheep every day. But we can sit here and I can watch Nebraska not quite play the same game of football that we played 20 years ago, but I mean, everything in life has been made so much better that you've got to figure that you do a lucky straw by, staying in the womb for a couple 100,000 years and then just emerging at the right time. So I would focus on the things that have been good in your life rather than the bad things that happen, because bad things do happen. But it can often be a wonderful life. You could get terrible breaks in it. I mean, so far that really hasn't happened with me, but it's happened with some of my friends. But you get some bad breaks from time to time. But for 94 years, I've been able to drink whatever I want to drink, and they predict all kinds of terrible things for me, but it hasn't happened yet. So, and it's true. I mean, if you look at what pro football players are making now and everything compared to what they were making 30 or 40 years ago, you can say, well, isn't that wonderful? But if you look at the lifespan of professional athletes, after a while you get used to you really decide that you're better off if you really weren't the first one chosen to be on the baseball team or the basketball team or anything else. The human body, well, Charlie and I think I speak for the others to some extent, that we never really exercised that much or did anything. We were carefully preserving ourselves for the years. So, look at the bright side of things to the extent that you can. And you know, you're lucky enough to, you're here today, you're healthy, you've come from a long distance, and you're getting a chance to learn more about something that interests you, and compare that with the situation a couple hundred years ago that you would have been offered. So anyway, that's enough moralizing. Okay, Becky?
This question comes from Himanshu Bandal for Ajit and Warren. Autonomous vehicles are already driving across roads in American cities with no driver involvement. How do Warren and Ajit think about any disruption risk from these autonomous vehicles to Geico's auto insurance business, which is built around understanding and underwriting human drivers? Wouldn't what we call auto insurance today just become product liability for autonomous vehicles and autonomous software companies?
Well, Ajit.
Yeah, there's no question that insurance for automobiles is going to change dramatically once self-driving cars become a reality. The big change that we will see is what you identified. Most of the insurance that is sold and bought revolves around operator errors and how often they happen, how severe they are, and therefore what premium we ought to charge. To the extent these new self-driving cars are more safe and are involved in fewer accidents, that insurance will be less required. Instead, it'll be substituted by, as you mentioned, product liability. So we at Geico and elsewhere are certainly trying to get ready for that switch, where we move from providing insurance for operator errors and be more ready to provide protection for product errors and omissions in the construction of these automobiles.
Yeah, we expect change in all our businesses, and it's a good thing we did. Charlie pushed me into it, but if I'd settled for being in New England textiles, you know, and even though it worked well for 70 years or so prior there too, you know, the world changes, and if the game didn't change at all, it really would be very interesting. You know, it's if every time you swung at a baseball, you hit a home run, the game wouldn't be interesting. If every time you hit a golf ball, you had a hole in one, it wouldn't be interesting. The fact that there will be things you have to think about all the time as you go along, and you'll make mistakes and all that. That's really part of the fun. I mean, your brain would turn to mush if you didn't have a few problems now and then. So, you know, auto insurance will change, although it's remarkable how little it has changed. But it's only been around since, you know, for a relatively small time, and who knows what we're doing to move in transportation 100 years from now. If you go back a couple hundred years ago, who could have predicted the United States would look like what it does, and people would move like they do, and people would enjoy themselves like they do? And I mean, it's just it's a dynamic world, and the biggest thing we have to worry about, unfortunately, is that we've learned how to destroy the world too, and in recent years, and so we've got this wonderful world, which now we know that there are 8 countries that, and probably a 9th coming on, that can destroy, and we don't have what I would consider necessarily the perfect people leading each of one of the 9, or some of the 9 countries. And you know, when Einstein came up with E equals MC squared back in 1905, he didn't dream of the fact, I mean, that energy could really be converted, or mass could be converted into energy in a way that would change the world. When I was born in 1930, they had known about the law of physics that Einstein had come up with. 25 years earlier, nobody, to my knowledge, had thought, what can this do to change warfare in the future? And literally, it just wasn't thought. Einstein didn't think about it at that point. And then in 1939, Roosevelt got a letter around a month before Germany moved into Poland. It got around August 1st. It's the most famous letter in history from Leo Szilard. Leo Szilard couldn't get his letter in front of Roosevelt because whoever heard of Leo Szilard, but he got Einstein to sign it. And Roosevelt probably understood about as much about physics as I do, so he didn't understand it, but he understood that Einstein signed it. So he calls in General Grover, may not have been general then, and said, we should do something about this. And all we did was learn how to destroy the world. And we needed to do it. And Germany had Heisenberg, and he looked like he was ahead of us. And we can't put that genie back in the bottle. And the world does change, and we've got we've got wonderful things, but we also have, we have a guy in North Korea. If we criticize his haircut, even, who knows what he might decide to do with. What does North Korea need nuclear weapons for? I mean, can that be a good thing in the world? But they're not going to go away. So it's a world of change, and we are enjoying incredible change that's contributed to everybody in this room living so much better than people were living a couple hundred years ago. But we haven't been able to avoid. We haven't changed human beings very much so far. We've certainly changed weapons of mass destruction, but we haven't made much progress with the human race, and we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime, we'll see changes in auto insurance too, and cars, and that will be more. It'd be easier for us to deal with it than it was when we had to deal with the problems of turning out textiles in New England. And you deal with the world as it develops. And like I say, everybody here is living in the luckiest period. But enjoy your luck, and you still try to figure out the answers to what's going to happen in auto insurance as we go along, and we've done pretty well actually adapting to the answers. There's a few big problems in insurance, and I don't know how the insurance industry adapts to them particularly, but that makes the game interesting. You really don't. You wouldn't want to go out and play golf if you know you're going to hit the ball in the hole on every hole.
I'd just like to add, we talked about the shift to product liability and to protection for accidents that take place because of an error in terms of how the product was designed or supplied. The only thing I want to add is, in addition to that shift, I think what we'll see is a major shift where the number of accidents that take place and need to be provided for will drop dramatically because of automatic driving. But on the other hand, the cost per repair, every time there's an accident, the cost of repairing and bringing everything back to where it used to be would go up very significantly because of the amount of technology that's going into the car. How those two variables interact with each other in terms of the total cost of providing the insurance, I think is still an open issue.
I'll give you two interesting figures to ponder. When I walked into Geico's offices in 1950, the average price of a policy was around $40 a year. It varies all over the lot depending on location and everything, but you know, it's pretty easy to get up to $2,000, and depending on how urban your areas are and everything, you can get considerably higher. During that same time, the number of people killed in auto accidents have fallen from roughly 6 per 100 million miles driven to a little over 1. So the cars become incredibly safer, and it costs 50 times as much down or thereabouts to buy insurance policies. So when people talk about the developments in car driving and all that sort of thing, it's a lot easier sometimes. I mean, the Buck Rogers aspect of it, people look at it, but they don't actually think of what really happens to the math of the business. The auto insurance industry has been a huge growth industry. And for that matter, homeowners insurance prices in Nebraska have doubled in the last 10 years, adjusted for general inflation. And convective storms, have just gone on a tear, and it's still unprofitable to write a homeowner's insurance in Nebraska after doubling the price in the last 10 years. So it's very hard to predict what these big changes mean, and you just have to keep thinking all the time. But you don't want to read some research report that says the world's coming to an end or the world's going to be wonderful because of this or that, because there's about 50 other developments going on at the same time that you need to think about, and that you need to keep observing as you go along. You never reach an answer in this business. You reach a point of action that you take, but we try to get into as high probability things as we think we can do and play the game in the same way. But it will be different than you think. and you should wake up every morning and think about that too if you're in the business of managing businesses.
Hey, Warren, as we approach the break, would you like to address the operating earnings?
Oh, yeah.
First quarter?
Yeah, let's put up we released our 10Q this morning, and we always try to do it on a Saturday so nobody gets a jump on other people. And we just have three simple charts. You'll see that our insurance underwriting income was down dramatically for the first quarter, and last year was as good a year as you'll see in insurance. And it's always unpredictable in insurance, but everything broke our way, or the insurance industry's way last year. Prices are down this year. Risks are up this year. So you don't have to be a genius to figure out what the answer is on that. So, but we do have unusual advantages in the insurance business that can't really be replicated by our competition. That doesn't mean they aren't trying to get advantages we don't have. But we'll try to replicate anything that seems better. In fact, we'll try and top it. But I wouldn't talk about our insurance business as much as I do with unless I really thought we had some really permanent advantages in a very, very large industry. We just announced within the last 24 hours that we and Zurich and Chubb have arranged a joint operation to be the writer of really large sums that very few people can do, and of course we got to write them at the right price in terms of liability. But we can do that sort of thing without blinking, and anybody that wants to do it wants to get us in it. I mean, so anyway, our investment income did not change that much because we have a float that grows a little bit, which gives us more money for investment, and then we have retained earnings, which grow. So we would expect in any year to have like 40 billion or more that will build up investments unless we find things to do with it. So the investment income rates on treasuries are less than they were, or short-term bills, I should say, are less than they were before. So you had that negative effect pulling it down, but not that much, and we had more money. So we came up with a little more in the way of earnings. The railroad is earning a little more than last year, but it's not earning what it should be earning at the present time. But that's solvable and is getting solved. And it's still an incredible asset for Berkshire. The energy company last year was having particular problems, and those are absent this year, so those earnings are up. And then among our range of general businesses, they were pretty much a push. And I think you did a little calculation the other day on how many were up and how many were down. Greg?
Yeah, of our 49 that we measure closely, 21 were up and 28 were down. So you can tell it was really a mixed quarter when you go across the non-insurance operating businesses.
Yeah. The next slide, I'm getting a 5-minute warning here. We'll throw the long ball now. Shows our financial condition, which continues to hold a lot more in cash and treasury bills than I would like, but that's simply a question of when opportunities occur, and if you get real opportunities every 5 or 6 years, you have to be patient. Charlie always pointed out that we made most of our money out of about 8 or 9 ideas over 50 years, and we talked about it every day, and we read every report, and we did everything else. But if you think you can get an idea a day from listening to your Frederick book or doing a lot of reading of the financial information published, or forget it, because every now and then you get extraordinary opportunities, and most of the time you don't have much of an edge. So we also have on that our float, which continues to build. I don't think there's no company that has, property casualty company that has our float as their Ajit.
Yeah, clearly we are heads and shoulders above anyone else.
Yeah. So that is money that, as long as we're writing it at an underwriting profit, is absolutely free money. And we would expect that over a 50-year, 100-year period that we would be able to say the same thing. But there will be years when you have a very bad underwriting record, and it'll lead into the float earnings. But so far in the last 20 years, I think we've only had, one underwriting loss of any.
Yeah, I think if you look at the entire range, including life insurance, our cost of float is 2.2 negative. That means we've got the float plus somebody's given us 2.2% of that as cash to...
Yeah, it's like running a bank where people leave their money with you and you pay them minus 2.2%, and you don't have any check clearing or anything else to do, and it's included in that. So, but we run our business actually with a different mindset than any other PC company, I think, probably in the world, and I wouldn't be talking about it if I thought they could duplicate it. And then the final page is on share repurchases, and clearly we have not made share repurchases so far this year. And share repurchases, if Berkshire buys Berkshire shares and repurchases, we now pay more than you will pay if you buy Berkshire shares. I don't think people generally know that, but there is a tax that was introduced a year or so ago where we pay 1%, and that not only hurts us because we pay more for it than you do pay. It's a better deal for you than for us, but it actually hurts some of our investee companies quite substantially. And Tim Cook has done a wonderful job. I mean, really wonderful job running Apple, but he spent $100 billion roughly in a year repurchasing shares, and there's a 1% charge attached to that now. So that's $1 billion a year that he pays when he buys Apple stock in, which we like, compared to what you pay. And that doesn't sound like much, but, well, $1 billion sounds like a lot still. But there are people that want to increase that particular rate dramatically, and you won't read about it or anything like that, but it does make it slightly less attractive than it was before, and we will only buy in our shares if we think that they're almost certainly underpriced, as valued very conservatively, and we get that opportunity occasionally. But the higher that charge goes that the federal government charges us for doing it, the less we will be able to do our repurchases. So on that happy note, we will rejoin at 1 o'clock, and we will, I'm sorry. Correct that to 11 o'clock, and then we will.
Yeah, 11 o'clock.
And then we'll continue to 1 o'clock, and then in the meantime, enjoy yourself, and I think all our stores are still open, so bring the cash register.
Here, sir, I'll help you here.
Okay, everyone. Okay, we're ready to go, and I'm going to lead off by actually recommending a movie. I know that's why you came, but I would recommend to all of you that you go to Amazon Prime. I've got no financial interest in this, but you go to Amazon Prime and click on a documentary called Becoming Katharine Graham. It's an incredible story from 50 or so years ago, and to some extent I had the good luck to be kind of a viewer of some American history that I think is fascinating. So if you feel that I misled you, you can write me a note, and I promise to report how many readers didn't agree with it. But click on the Becoming Catherine Graham, and you'll see a story of a remarkable story of American history. And there are a good many portions in there that I, who lived through that period, didn't know about at the time. And I don't think really every American citizen ought to watch it. So with that, I hope you all spend some more money out there in our friendly shops, and we will go to station 9.
Hi, Warren. My name is Robert, and I'm a shareholder from Toronto, Canada. So, Warren, 3 years ago, Charlie Rose asked you a question to the effect of what you wanted to be remembered for. And your reply was, he was a teacher. So in that spirit, Greg, I'm curious to hear maybe a story of where you learned something very profound from Warren. I'm sure you learned many things, but if there's a story that kind of comes up in your mind, we'd love to hear it. And vice versa, if we have the time, Warren, what's something that you maybe learned from Greg? Thank you.
Yeah, I will turn this over to Greg in just 1 second, but now the main thing I'd like to be known for is old age.
Well, Warren is obviously a remarkable teacher, and I benefit from that every day. And as I've already touched on, for many years, I'm fortunate that if I had to be remembered as something right now, obviously I'd want to be remembered as a great father, but equally a coach. And that goes to family, friends, and just being involved with the kids I coach in hockey or baseball or whatever it may be. I think we've got a great opportunity to give back to them at a very young age. So obviously those would be how I'd want to be remembered, and hopefully that'll be many, many years from now. But I love thinking of Warren truly as a teacher, and he's in every day get the opportunity to continue to learn. Warren and I, his dialogue is strong every week, and we're always talking around opportunities in Berkshire or things that are going on globally or in the U.S., and each one's truly a learning moment. I'll maybe go back to the very first meeting with Warren, and because it still stands out in my mind. Obviously, it was an incredible opportunity. Warren was buying or acquiring Mid-American Energy Holdings Company at that time, or thinking about it, and I had the opportunity with my partners to go over there on a Saturday morning, and we're discussing the business, and Warren had the financial statements in front of him. And like anybody, I was sort of expecting a few questions on how the business was performing or a variety of things, but Warren locked in immediately to what was on the balance sheet and the fact we had some derivative contracts, the weapons of mass destruction. And associated with the utility business, we do have them because they use them to match certain positions, and they're never matched perfectly, but you do have them, and we're required in the regulated business. But I just remember Warren going to it immediately and asking the composition of it and what was the underlying risk in it, and wanting to thoroughly understand it. It wasn't that big of a position, but it was absolutely one of the risks he was concerned about as he was acquiring Mid-American. And obviously in light of Enron and everything that had gone on, it was a very pertinent question. And then the follow-up to that was, then there's an energy crisis in the U.S. Around electricity and natural gas, and a variety of folks were making significant sums of money. This is a year, 18 months later. And Warren's follow-up question a couple of years later to me was, and I knew it was more just checking or testing, so how much money are we making during this energy crisis? Are we making a lot? Are the speculative positions in place, and are we making it? And the answer was, we're really not making any more today than we would have been 6 months ago, because all those derivatives were truly to support our business and weren't speculative. So just that focus on understanding the business of what he was acquiring, understanding the risks around it, still stand out in my mind. Warren?
Yeah, that's one thing we've really never talked about here, but I spend more time looking at balance sheets than I do income statements. And Wall Street really doesn't pay much attention to balance sheets, but I like to look at balance sheets over an 8 or 10 year period before I even look at the income account. Because there are certain things that's harder to hide or play games with on the balance sheet than you can with the income statement. And I mean, neither one gives you the total answer on anything, but you still ought to understand what the figures are saying and what they don't say and what they can't say and what the management will like them to say that the auditors wouldn't like them to say. And I mean, there's just a lot to be learned. And you do learn more. You learn more from balance sheets, in my view, than most people give them credit for. In terms of, I really haven't. I'm not worried about being remembered about that. People don't remember. Well, they don't remember enough about Katharine Graham, for example, in terms of this story that shaped America in many ways. Certainly, it had just all kinds of impact. And I think, I mean, history is so fascinating. And Charlie was probably the best person you could imagine in what he learned. Charlie was never satisfied with just superficial things about any subject. He really wanted to understand it. And he always would tell me that, don't take a position on anything until you can describe the arguments against it better than the person who is arguing with you, that you should be able to argue their case better than they can. He was a remarkable teacher, and but so were those other fellows I mentioned. I've had and of course my dad was an incredible teacher. So you make the most of the people you meet that are going to make you a better person, and probably forget about the rest to quite an extent. Okay, let's move on to Becky, you're next.
This question comes from David Rubin, a shareholder from Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a question for Greg. We've heard over the decades and are familiar with Warren and Charlie's investment thesis and their circle of competence. During the first 10 years after taking over as CEO, Greg will be tasked with allocating more capital during that time than Berkshire has had to allocate in its history. Given this, I'd like to hear from Greg about his views on capital allocation, particularly into new businesses.
Sure. So, this bar is not too high. But very fortunate when you think of Berkshire, again, and we've talked about this, where we start from, and I'll clearly touch on the investment and the related investment allocation. But we start from a great place where we've got a great culture within the business. we have values that we as a management team and really as defined by Warren and those Charlie and everybody associated with the business. We've got great values that really set Berkshire up well for the future. And obviously, as we deploy capital and allocate capital, it's critical to Berkshire as we go forward. And equally, it's around managing risk. But when I think of our values, there are a couple that are absolutely critical. One, will maintain the reputation of Berkshire and that of our company. And I view that in investing or how we operate things across each of our businesses. That will always be a priority and something that we'll ensure is in the forefront of our minds. I think equally as we then look at our back to Warren's balance sheet comment, we will have a fortress of a balance sheet. And we want to, I thought Sue Decker, our lead director, said it well yesterday, we've got a significant set of cash right now, but it's an enormous asset to have that. And that will continue to be a philosophy. Yes, when we can deploy it, we'll deploy it well, and I'll come to that. But equally, we do recognize it as a strategic asset, and it allows us to weather the difficult times and at the same and not be dependent on anybody. So again, that will be an investment philosophy. We will remain Berkshire, and we will never be dependent on a bank or some other party for Berkshire to be successful. I would, thank you. I would then move to touch on allocation of capital be absolutely critical, but with that comes management of risk and understanding risk. And that falls upon all our managers, insurance, non-insurance, but we'll bring that across Berkshire. And then the other value I would touch on, but that really relates to where I'm going, is ultimately we have a great set of operating companies that do produce significant cash flows, be it in the insurance companies creating float or our various non-insurance companies producing significant cash flows on an annual basis. We intend to continue to ensure that's a strength of Berkshire as we go forward. And it's absolutely critical to our long-term success. Now, with those cash flows and with the float, and then equally as touched on, we have significant resources already on our balance sheet. We'll really continue to move forward with a very similar philosophy, or it's an identical philosophy to what we've had currently and for the past 60 years. We'll start by looking at those opportunities within our business, and by that I mean within our insurance, non-insurance businesses. Are they properly capitalized and have the opportunity to manage their business? And that will continue to exist. They'll operate in an autonomous way, but in the end, Berkshire still manages the capital that will go into those businesses or what potentially will come out of those businesses. Equally, the next opportunity is to acquire businesses in their totality or 100%. And there are great times when we can do that. Warren touched on, we had one that was interesting in the last quarter, the $10 billion acquisition. But again, the value relative to the risk have to be right. And if it's right, we want to own it. If it's not the time, there'll be another time to own assets like that. And then there's the opportunity to own pieces of companies through the equity. But as Warren's always highlighted, and again, this will be our approach to how we think around those companies, though we own a piece of a company. We own a piece of that cash flow. We own a piece of their balance sheet. It's not just a share certificate. And as we approach that, and really we'll approach it with the thought that we're going to own this company for the long term. It's, again, understanding what, be it the 100% company or the 1% company, do we thoroughly understand and thoroughly do we have a strong view of what those economic prospects of those companies will look like? And Warren said it earlier, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. If we don't have a view of that, we won't be investing, be it 100% or 2% of a company through equities. We have to thoroughly understand what those prospects look like, and associated with understanding those prospects, we need to understand the underlying risk of the businesses. And it's really the investment philosophy and how Warren and the team have allocated capital for the past 60 years. Really, it will not change, and it's the approach we'll take as we go forward. Warren?
Yeah, and I don't want to go on too long on this, but
sorry, I covered it.
No, but this is important because it's very obvious that the country, for example, needs an incredible improvement, rethinking, redirection, even to some extent, in the grid. I mean, we've outgrown what would be the model that America should have. And in a sense, it's a problem, something akin to the interstate highway system, where you needed the power of the government really to get things done, because it doesn't work so well when you get 48 or 50 jurisdictions that each has their own way of thinking about things. And of course, in World War II, we called in people at $1 an hour, and we knew we had to turn out ships like crazy, and we knew that we had to convert Ford Motor from being a car manufacturer into an aircraft manufacturer in a matter of days, not weeks, not months. So you need that. There are certain really major investment situations where we have capital like nobody else has in the private system. We have particular know-how in the whole generation and transmission arena. The country's going to need it, but we have to figure out a way that makes sense from the standpoint of the government, from the standpoint of the public, and from the standpoint of Berkshire. And we haven't figured that out yet. I don't know whether Greg wants to even explain a few of the major problems, but that is a clear and present use of hundreds of billions of dollars. And you have people that set up funds and say they're getting paid for just assembling stuff, but that's not the way to handle it. The way to handle it is to have some kind of a government private industry cooperation similar to what you do in a war. And I don't think when they were doing the highway system, I don't think that the government set up its own guys that were going to pour all the cement or anything like that. But you needed a cooperation, and we're at that point, I think, in terms of energy. But I don't think we've made any progress, particularly, though. Tell us more about that, Greg.
Yeah, and I think these are very unique in that, not unique in that it's sort of reflective of where we're at. There will be very significant investment opportunities across a variety of industries, as Warren touched on in the electric industry. or the energy space. We obviously know that well with our existing business. And the capital required to meet the long-term needs of what's currently projected as demand is enormous. And we as Berkshire will be in a good position to help address those needs. But the model around it and the risks that need to be addressed to deploy that type of capital will be different than they are today.
Yeah.
Warren's point.
Yeah, the muscle of the federal government will be needed, but the test of whether you can have 48 or 50, depending on the nature of things, jurisdictions that are cooperating to do something that has opposition, will have opposition in every single state. If they'd taken a vote during World War II, or if they'd taken a vote on the interstate highway system, it would have been slowed down to an incredible degree. So the question is how to use these strengths that this country has to actually turn it in to what it should be capable of, while still preserving, a republic with 48 and connected and a couple of unconnected states, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. But we do have capital, and we actually have some knowledge that very few places have. I mean, we know what the game's about, but putting together that energy with knowledge and with capital and everything it's just not easy. And it should be something that we're capable of in the country, but the country was not designed for having, in a certain way, it was not designed for having 48 different jurisdictions that could mess up anything that you were attempting to do. And during wartime, it's one thing to get agreement, but during peacetime, it's something. It's a different problem. That's going to be one for the next generation. But it's important. Okay, station 10.
Good morning, Mr. Buffett and Mr. Abel. I'm Dorcas Tang. I'm 14 years old. My father, Moore Tang, MGRT CEO, brought me here for 2 consecutive years. And I promise I will come back every year, since I queue up at 2 in the morning every meeting you hold. My dad owned BRKA shares, and he said I need to work hard to earn my piece of BRKB. We are both are from China, Hong Kong, and I would like to ask, what's the essential element for a global teenager like me if we want to be part of Berkshire like Mr. Greg Abel? Like, what piece of knowledge I should learn so you will hire me in the future?
Well,
Okay.
if you're talking about the future, you better talk to Greg, so we'll let Greg answer that.
My final words, finally, Mr. Buffett. I learned a lot from this meeting, and of course I will come here every year. And I wish you can attend as many as possible, as you and Mr. Charlie Munger, the most respectful people, have inspired me and my father a lot. I wish you happy and healthy, and maybe one day in the future, we can make the world more prosperous all together, like you said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, well, I think your dad said it best. He highlighted that to become part of Berkshire, to own some Berkshire shares, you're going to have to work hard. And I think hard work takes all of us a long ways in life, and I would never diminish that. There's a lot of things that matter in life, but if you start with a great work ethic and have that attitude that you want to contribute, you're going to go a long ways in life, and you'll find great enjoyment, because as Warren said, you'll then, if you work hard, you're going to find the things you love in life, and it'll lead to that. And we truly look forward to the day you're part of Berkshire. Thank you.
Yeah. Keep a lot of curiosity and read a lot, as Charlie would say. Okay, Becky.
This question comes from Matthew Tezak in Layton, Utah. He said, please discuss your strategy on how to protect our company from future liabilities due to wildfires blamed on our electric utility companies out west.
Well, that's a very good question, and we made some mistakes in the past when we bought Pacific Corp in 2005.
Yes.
Walter Scott and David Sokol and myself, three guys who capitalists at heart, and we're dealing with our own money, but we made a mistake by not carving it up into the 7 states that we were buying, and it came with an aggregation where it wasn't state by state, and we kept the same structure, and that was a big mistake. Every part of the country is going to need electricity, and there are going to be places where public electric or privately held electric utilities would be very foolish to operate. And how that gets resolved in a democracy, we will find out. But those are the facts as they stand now, I would say. Greg?
Yeah. The reality, the risk around the wildfires, i.e. do the wildfires occur, they're not going away. No. And we know that, and the risk probably goes up each year. So, but what we can do to reduce the risk of it impacting our system and our underlying assets and unfortunately the liabilities that come with such events, we can change that and manage that. We can't eliminate the risk, but we can reduce it. And that's where we've got our teams in the West, but we really are approaching it across all our energy infrastructure, because the reality is the wildfires have now occurred in Texas. They've had a variety of them throughout the U.S., and we're all very focused on how we manage that risk. How we manage it is we start by addressing the actual assets, how we're maintaining them, and where we invest into them. So we try to make sure that they're either not causing the fire or potentially even hardening the system as to what can they withstand. So it's very much, we start with the operational focus. We then take it even further, and this is something Warren and I've discussed many times, is that the utilities started to recognize when we have these unusual weather events, and Warren touched on what's been happening in Nebraska with storms, but they're equally occurring or significant events occurring out west. But when we have those, we've gotten very, very good at saying, okay, we have to manage the system differently. We'll potentially de-energize because there's likely to be an event. But the one thing we hadn't tackled, and this is very relevant to the one significant event we had back in 2020 in Pacific Corp, is we didn't de-energize the system as the fire was approaching. Because our employees and the whole management team have been all their lives trained to keep the lights on. And the last thing they want to do is turn those lights off and have a system de-energized. And after those events, and as we really looked at how we're going to move forward in managing the assets and reducing that risk, we have clearly recognized as a team that we have to de-energize those assets. So now as we get fires encroaching at a certain number of miles, we de-energize, because we do not want to contribute to the fire, nor obviously harm any of our consumers or contribute, unfortunately, if there's a death. And that's really where we had to take our team, that we're managing a different risk now. It's not around keeping the lights on. It's around protecting the general public and ensuring the fire does not spread further. So we've gone as far as that, and I'll stand corrected on this one, but we're probably the one utility or across our utilities that does that today. And we strongly believe that. Becky?
Can I just follow up on that?
Yeah.
Doesn't that open you up to other risk? If you shut down your system, a hospital gets shut down, somebody dies?
Fortunately, that's something that we do deal with a lot, because we have power outages that occur by accident. So when we look at critical infrastructure, because it's an excellent point, and we're constantly reevaluating it, and we do receive a lot of feedback from our customer groups as to how do we manage that. But that is something we deal with on a more routine basis than we'd ever like. The lights go out, we have to make sure the hospitals stay on, emergency units can respond and all that. But there is risk there. So then we spend a lot more time educating the consumers and our consumer groups, our customers. Okay, this is what will happen. We need to understand your unusual situations. And how can we best tackle that? Again, so we just don't take on another liability. So there's a lot around de-energization. And then just to take it to the last step, and Warren's touched on that, just in general on energy policy, we have to work with our states and our regulators to ensure this was never risks we took on or envisioned when we were investing in utilities, nor would any of the investors who've invested in other energy companies. You earn a very set return for taking on a very set, defined risks associated with that asset. And this has gone well beyond that. We don't earn the type of returns, nor can you earn a large enough return to take on these risks. So it's not just about solving the return side. We really have to solve the risk side, which means we work with our regulators. We're working with our state legislators to get to the right answer. And that's really that'll be an ongoing process. There are not silver bullets out there, but every day our teams across utilities are working hard to reduce that risk, recognizing the fundamental risk of the wildfires is not going away.
But there's some there's some problems that can't be solved, and we shouldn't be in the business of taking your money, investors' money, and tackling things that we don't know the solution for. And you can present the arguments, but it's a political decision when you are dealing with states or the federal government. And if you're in something where you're going to lose, the big thing to do is quit. And you present your case as well as you can and everything else, but if you don't hold the pen in the end, we don't have any business taking your money and doing dumb things with us. And we can do our best to explain what the intelligent things are, but it's your money. And so it's very hard to tell how to handle the questions of politically determined decisions that are going to go to court in many cases, but you know that it just doesn't make sense. We know what we think a sensible system would be, and we ought to explain what we think it is, and do the best to get our position, because it's pro-social to have the right solution to have it. But the right solution, for example, in the interstate, wasn't to let 48 states each decide on their own way of doing it and award contractors the jobs based. There's some problems that can't be solved, and we are not in the business of trying to solve insolvable problems.
Yeah. I'd even go, for example.
But then the problem you have, of course, is that the people that work for you, it's their job, so they want to have reasons to keep going, and those are tough choices if you're managing. But that's why they have managers.
Yeah, Warren, I was just going to add, because you touched on something really important there, that effectively, for example, with the utilities and the wildfires, we can't just become the insurer of last resort, and that we're going to cover any cost and all costs, irrespective of what occurred. And that's a little bit of the situation we're in right now with our largest challenge, a 2020 wildfire, where there were four fires occurring at a challenging time. One, we've always asserted, was a lightning strike that was not inside our service territory. The fire burnt into our service territory, and we became responsible for that fire, effectively through the courts. And we've continued to hold firm that we're not responsible for that. Rightfully, I mean, we didn't contribute to it, and we didn't initiate it, nor did we feel we ever contributed to it. But it's getting, again, if you look at the risks that's there, we have to manage through things like that. We'll get through that litigation. We're happy to report, for example, on that one, after 5 years, the Oregon Forestry Department has come out and said the fires, the other fires we did have that we were able to manage and extinguish, did not contribute to that fire. And that fourth fire is the largest fire of the four. It's 60% of the claims. We're 5 years into effectively getting that information into the courts. Now, that will outline our legal strategy, obviously, going forward, but it's things we're dealing with. But we continue to learn from this as a utility industry. So we're in very much each of the legislatures, as I said, making sure we get clear definition where liability falls, what can the economic damages be, but most importantly, what can the non-economic damages be? And again, with the thought, we can't be the insurer of last resort. We just can't be responsible for everything that happens in a state.
Yeah. If we want to do it with our own money, we can do it, but we're not going to do things with your money that we think are stupid. Yeah. I mean, you ought to get rid of us if we do it. And it's easier to do stupid things with other people's money than it is with your own money. That's one of the problems government has, just generally. We don't want to bring it to private enterprise. But it is important that the United States have an intelligent energy policy, just as it was important during World War II that we learned how to make ships instead of cars extremely fast. And we figured out the answer. We combined private enterprise with the power of government. And but how feasible that is in a democracy, and it was clearly obvious during World War what needed to be done, and we did it. But it's not so clear when you get 330 million people all arguing their own self-interest, and of course deciding what will happen, and having the people often who are making the decisions reacting as they did 20 years earlier, when they don't really bear the responsibility for the decision. Right. Anyway, that's management, and we'll do our best. Station 11.
Hello, my name is Alicja Burek and I'm from Poland, but I currently live in Chicago. This question is on behalf of an inspiring man that I know, Walid Ahmed, who's here with us today. Mr. Buffett, nearly 74 years ago, on a cold Saturday in January 1951, you traveled 8 hours by train from New York to Washington. You went all the way on nothing but hope that someone might teach you more about the insurance industry. Arriving at Geico's office to find the doors locked, you persisted until a janitor let you inside. You credit that meeting with Lorimer Davidson for the insurance float that was the rocket fuel behind Berkshire's success. In 2011, when I was 15, I wrote you with similar determination, asking to meet. You kindly wrote back saying you had only 3,000 days left and more pressing priorities. Well, Mr. Buffett, it's now been 5,000 days since you replied. And so inspired by your persistence, in 1951 and the tenacity of Mrs. B, I humbly renew my request for just a quarter of the time Davy gave you, a single hour in your office.
Oh. Well,
you may wonder, why must it be you? You have often shared an anecdote about a Polish Jew who survived Auschwitz, who said to you once, Warren, I'm very slow to make friends because when I look at someone, I ask myself, would they hide me? You said that the number of people would hide you was the best test of life well lived. Well, I believe that at this meeting you don't have 40,000 shareholders, but you have 40,000 people who would hide you. You are a testament to a life extraordinarily well lived. Yet even you have not fully witnessed this transformative power of a client.
I'll let you write. I'll let you write my biography, but I think I've got the point of your question.
So respectfully, I ask again, Mr. Buffett, before Father Time wins, will you please grant Waleed Ahmed an hour of your time or any time you can dedicate? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and I will say this: so I grant an hour to everybody of the 40,000 here. Well, but I'll have an interesting time the rest of my life. But I'll give you one tip. I found that when I was very young, and I would drive around to various companies all over the country, and because I was very young, and these were companies that were offbeat, and they didn't have investor relations departments then, almost every CEO would see me because they figured they'd never see me again. And they weren't getting calls like that. And I would ask them two questions. I would explain to them, it's not a bad idea, incidentally. If you're going to walk into somebody's office and you say you want 10 minutes of their time, take a hourglass and stick it on the desk of the person you're talking to and turn it up so that it's going to go for 10 minutes, and you say you're going to leave in 10 minutes unless they ask you to stay. And that sets the terms. But then once you have that, if they're in the coal business, we'll say, which happened to be one that I was interested in 70 years ago or so, you just ask them one question, that if they were to be stuck on a desert island and they had to own only one of their competitors' stock during the 10 years they were going to be on that island, which one would it be and why? And then after they give you that answer, you said the same thing. If you were going to short your net worth while you were on that island, which would it be and why? Because every manager likes to talk about their competitors. They're like a bunch of school kids, when they get into talking about their competitors. And I probably learned more about various industries by just making sure that they didn't think I'd stay too long, and that in the meantime they would have the floor and talk about their competitors. I kept my own mouth shut in those days. That's a lesson I've lost somewhere along the line. But you essentially, they've outsourced. Or I shouldn't say outsourced, but they've departmentalized investor relations at all companies of size practically now. So you've got 3,000 companies or whatever they have, and they all have departments, and each one of them has an investor relations department practically, and their job is to say, this is the best thing you can do today is buy our stock. Well, the whole concept is total idiocy, but it's a big business, and it gets bigger, and the investor relations department gets bigger, and it's what we have now. But do a little of your own work, your own way. But Berkshire Hathaway has got plenty of material out there for you to read. And when you get through reading it all, you'll know way more than most of the people that work at Berkshire. So you don't need a personal interview. If we take an hour times even the 40,000 people we may have here, plus Becky's many listeners and viewers, it just doesn't work. So I admire your effort, but you'll just have to settle for that as the admiration that you get in this. Okay. Becky?
This is a question that you touched on in a lot of ways in the last answer from before, but I did get this question from a few different people, so I'd like to ask it. Ricardo Briz, a longtime shareholder based in Panama, says that he was very happy to see Berkshire acquire 100% of BHE. It was done in two steps. One, in late 2022, 1% was purchased from Greg Abel for $870 million, implying a valuation of BHE of $87 billion. And then two, in 2024, the remaining 8% was purchased from the family of Walter Scott Jr. for $3.9 billion, implying a valuation of $48.8 billion for the enterprise. That second larger transaction represented a 44% reduction in valuation in just 2 years. Ricardo writes that Pacific Corp liabilities seem too small to explain this. Therefore, what factors contributed to the difference in value for BHE between those two moments in time?
Well, we don't know how much we'll lose out of Pacific Corp and decisions that are made, but we also know that certain of the attitudes demonstrated by that particular example have got analogs throughout the utility system, and there's a lot of states that so far have been very good, decent to operate in, and there are some now that are rat poison, as Charlie would say, to operate in, and that knowledge was accentuated when we saw what happened in the Pacific Northwest, and it's accentuated by what we've seen as to how utilities have been treated in certain other situations. And then on top of that, so that it wasn't just a direct question of what was involved at Pacific Corp, it was an extrapolation of a societal trend. And secondly, we also had a decision we didn't expect out at all, the real estate business, and those kind of things can change values, and courts can change values, and it's a lot easier to make those decisions when you just own marketable securities than when you own businesses. And I've made plenty of those decisions as I've watched what have happened in various industries and companies in over 70 years, but Greg made the decision, which was fine with us, to get out. Well, and he had no knowledge of what was going to be happening in either the real estate field or the utility field, and we're not in the mood to sell any businesses, but Berkshire Hathaway Energy is worth considerably less money than it was 2 years ago based on societal factors, and that happens in some of our businesses. It certainly happened in our textile business, and it's happened. The public utility business is not as good a business as it was a couple of years ago, and if anybody doesn't believe that, they can look at Hawaiian Electric, and they can look at the Edison in the current wildfires situation in California, and there's societal trends that are. Oh, I just got a note here on my monitor that says the books are now sold out. So you'll have to spend your money on other things. Here's fudge. This is what I'm eating, so. But that's the explanation. That values change, and they don't always change upward. And when we made the deal with Greg, we would have been happy to buy out the Scott family at that price. And when we made the deal with the Scott company, we wouldn't have been happy to pay Greg the price that he received. But that's like Berkshire shares. We bought in stock at X, and we buy in stock at less than X if conditions change poor, and we pay over the years. We pay more and more because it builds in value, but it doesn't do it in a straight line. And I would say that our enthusiasm for buying public utility companies is different now than it would have been a couple years ago. That happens in other industries too, but it's pretty dramatic in public utilities, and it's particularly dramatic in public utilities because they are going to need lots of money. So if you're going to need lots of money, you probably ought to behave in a way that encourages people to give you lots of money, and we will see where we go. We'd like to see public utilities do well, but our responsibility is to the shareholders of Berkshire Hathaway. Okay, station one again.
Dear Warren, dear Greg, dear fellow owners, it's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Revi Panida. I was born in communist Albania, but I'm now teaching economics in London, England. The wonderful writing of Warren and Charlie has significantly shaped my thinking and teaching. I thank you both very much for the many insights over the years. Warren has often written about the importance of Berkshire's earning power to owners. My question is, what was, in your estimate, Berkshire's earning power in the latest fiscal year? It would be great if you can comment on any significant items that either increased or decreased the earning power as compared to reported net income measures for Berkshire. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think our underlying earning power was affected negatively here a while back by what happened in the utility field. I think that our earning power was not enlarged by any large acquisitions that come along, but they come along periodically. So we will see something at some point that well, could be, on the one that was $10 billion, we would have added to earning power. I mean, why else would we do it? So that's very situational. And of course, it depends so much on what the general market is doing and what interest rates are doing and what psychology is doing. We will make our best deals when people are the most pessimistic. That's been true ever since I was 1930, born in 1930. When I was born, things got much more attractive over the next 2 years, and apparently I didn't do anything about it there. But, that was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I blew it by, worrying about the kid in the next crib or something. But over my lifetime, I've had fabulous opportunities sometimes, and they happen because humans are human. And I don't, I'm fearful of all kinds of things. I don't want to try and, be one of the Walendas and walk on a tiny strip between a couple of twin towers or something, or whatever it may be. But I don't get fearful by things that other people are afraid of in a financial way. That the idea that if let's say Berkshire went down 50% next week, I would regard that as a fantastic opportunity, and it wouldn't bother me in the least. And most people aren't they just react differently. And so it's not that I don't have emotions, but I don't have emotions about the prices of stocks. I mean, those decisions get all the way to my brain, whereas emotions can get bogged down some other place. So Berkshire will increase its earning power over time as we retain money. I mean, we are doing things, making decisions every day. People are working, we're retaining earnings. We will build the earning power, but it won't be coming in any even stream, and it certainly won't be matched dollar for dollar on either the upside or the downside and market prices. But that's what makes it a good business. The investment business is that everything isn't properly appraised, and the sillier other people get, the better your opportunities get.